Welcome to Care More, Be Better, a podcast for people like you who care about the social impact of conscious companies and everyday heroes. Hear inspiring stories from those who put people and planet before profit and personal gain. You'll learn how you can make a difference, vote with your dollars, and get involved today. Here's your host, Karina Belizzi.
Hello, fellow do-gooders and friends. I'm your host, Karina Belizzi. Today, I want to involve you in some decisions that I'm making about this very podcast. So this episode is really all about feedback from you. As I come to the close of what is now my third year podcasting with over 150 episodes of Care More, Be Better in the world, it's really time that I include more of what I hear from my community. What types of discussions have really impacted you the most? So today, while I start this conversation with you, I want to take you on a journey of really where we've been together so far with some of my most popular episodes and really talk about the three ultimate classes of episodes that I think I've put into the world, at least the three major topics. So how am I going to gather this feedback, you might ask? First, I'd love for you to reach out to me either via Instagram at caremore.bebetter or via our website contact form, which is just available at caremorebebetter.com. Well, if you love email and prefer to do things that way, you can also send me an email note directly to hello@caremorebebetter.com. Another way is for you to join my newsletter, and I'll be sending out a more formal survey link in coming days. That survey link will allow you to provide your feedback in a completely anonymous capacity, or you can reveal who you are. Either case, it's all about you. The last method of feedback would be simply to leave me a review on my podcast page on either Podchaser or via Apple Podcasts or iTunes. And that's quite simple too. You could literally just write me a review and leave feedback in that space. Tell me what it is that you'd like to see. So as you think about this, as you think about where you might want Care More, Be Better to head, to be the thing that you want to listen to each week, I want to provide you with a little context. To date, my most listened to episodes go head to head on a monthly rotation. Interestingly, they also represent the two sides of the coin that is this podcast's byline, social impact and sustainability, which is also called Regeneration. The first is my interview from September 2021 with Paul Hawken, who had just released his newest book, Regeneration, Ending the Climate Crisis in One Generation. The other is an episode that I recorded weeks later with Mo Gaudat. It's called Scary Smart, How Artificial Intelligence Will Change Our World. Mo is an incredible individual. He was the chief business officer for Google X, and he went on to write best-selling books to help people solve for happy after the unfortunate death of his son, who was his ultimate inspiration, his best friend, who had barely become an adult when he passed. Now, Mo is one of those individuals who is putting everything of his experience in this world into the idea of giving back. The proceeds from his books, which are all bestsellers now for a good reason, they're great, go to his not-for-profit, which has the audacious goal of helping all people be happy. In Scary Smart, Mo really helps us to understand the incredible tool that AI can really be, and also the incredible risks that it can pose. His book is, as I've said, amazing, and our conversation truly delivers. So if you haven't listened to that episode, go back and give it a review. I'll include a direct link with show notes, and I gotta tell you, it remains one of my favorite episodes too. I've become a big fan of Mo, and I often enjoy his podcast too. So if you're looking for a great podcast that connects to spirituality, meaningful conversations, and doing good, check out Slow Mo. You can find it wherever you listen to podcasts, just like this one. Now, that other episode that kind of jockeys for first place is that interview with Paul Hawken. That book, Regeneration, Ending the Climate Crisis in One Generation, has now become his 6th New York Times bestseller. Now, I put a lot of time and research into that episode. After all, he created Project Drawdown, And having been one of those journalists who just wouldn't stop talking about the danger of not respecting Mother Earth, of using extractive principles in the things that we do, he really did rise to fame because he didn't give up on that message. And he wrote compelling arguments, and he created stories in his books that kept people reading, people who cared. That episode inspired me on a journey to cover the entirety of his book, chapter by chapter, in podcast review format for all of you. Now, I mentioned that because it was a different format than what I had done prior. I was trying something out. I was writing 6-page essays and then reading them to you with commentary, with quotes from the book, with my thoughts, with really what is a deep dive into why this was inspiring me. And I didn't hear back directly from people saying, "Oh my gosh, we loved it," but I did see listens. That is one of the things that is tough about podcasting. In a way, you're in an echo chamber with yourself, and that's it. So today, I'm picturing all of you sitting there in front of me, listening to my words, and I'm thinking of the feedback that I'll receive. I want to hear what it is that you genuinely love about specific episodes, or all of them, or something that you just don't like. I really want to be able to develop this in a direction that can support your journey. I feel like this is a two-way conversation, or has the potential to be that. I picture you, I think of you. I ultimately do this effort because I love it, because it inspires me, and because I'm working to inspire you too. So in that coverage of Regeneration, each week for 10 weeks, I did a 20 to 30-minute episode, really giving you a lowdown of each chapter, trusting that, hey, some people are just not going to go out there and pick up the book, but they could learn about its principles from me if they'd give it a listen. They took a lot of effort to produce, so this is the big decision. When I do solocasts, it's as much or more work than it would be to sit there and do an interview where I'm seeking to know as much as I can before going into the conversation, but where I'm also remaining curious, asking questions that come on the fly, trying to engage in interesting conversation, draw something out that I hadn't heard before, and bring that forward for all of you. A lot of my podcast interviews have required reading of technical texts like The New Fish written by Simon Setra, or even one all about soil and foil. I mean, really, these are things that I didn't expect to be reading to prepare for this show, but I do it. Podcasting, it takes effort. It's not just someone jumping into a sound booth and talking to themselves. We have to put planning into it. We have to put work into it. And so I guess what I'm asking for is for you to share your perspective on what you like the most, so I can lean into that, so I can push my energy in that direction, so I can take that feedback and run with it to create something that is even better. What do you really want to see more of? Do you want to see more interviews with leading individuals like the Paul Hawkins and Mo Gaudets of the world? Do you want to see me focused more on topics of social impact? Are there specific stories that you want to hear that you haven't heard? Or news items that you just don't think get enough attention in traditional media? Would you like to see those in interview format or in solocasts, or both? I'd also like to talk about a third class of podcasts that I periodically bring into the show, and that is topics that connect to health. My reason for covering health topics is quite simple. It's what I do for a living. And it's my belief that health and wellness have an immense social impact. How does that common saying go? If you have your health, or if you don't have your health, you have nothing. Or another way, health is wealth. I'm saying this now because there are quite a few episodes in this genre for me that stand out. In fact, some of them connect to social responsibility as well. Some of them connect to agriculture and regenerative agriculture, making foods in a more mindful way so that we can feed the populace, so that we can continue to grow, so that our populations aren't starving, so that we don't have food deserts, just as some examples. In fact, my third most popular episode of all time is about one of my favorite things in the world, a consumable, and that's coffee. I got to interview Mokhtar Alkhanshali, who is the founder of a company called Port of Mocha. and learn how he ended up braving the Arab Spring in Yemen, somewhat by accident, to bring us a more socially responsible and delectable cup of coffee. He really helped us understand that growers in this oldest region of the world were not treated well. They weren't being given a fair wage at all. They were essentially commoditized, and that the quality of the coffee had suffered because of it. So when he came in and he started paying them really a lot more money for their coffee and instituting new ways of actually procuring their coffee, of aging it and really processing it, that the coffee improved and that the livelihoods of the people there really improved too. And the cup of coffee that you and I would enjoy from Port of Mocha is an incredible, delectable treat. Okay, another thing is that you'll learn if you listen to my show with any regularity that coffee is something, I love it, right? But it also has health benefits that are truly amazing. It has been proven time and again in research studies to support brain health and reduce the likelihood of developing neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, a disease that actually took my grandmother. And I have to admit, I have one representation of this thing called ApoE4 allele, which is the part of the genome that is more associated with the development of Alzheimer's or other neurodegenerative diseases. I likely get it from my grandmother, for sure. She actually passed as a result of that and developed even cerebral palsy in her later years. It was really not friendly, not kind. So I'm on this quest in my life to really try and live a little bit more healthfully, to drink the great coffee and eat the great food that has a better source, that is more regenerative, so that my body can carry me through the years I have on this planet with the greatest health span, so that I can have a greater impact, so that I can have an impact through my food choices on the livelihoods of the people that I support, and also in not getting all these toxic chemicals into our environment. This is something that matters to me. So in that same vein, I have my fourth most popular show of all time, my fourth most popular episode of all time, which is an interview I did in the last year with Dr. William Li. He is an A-lister. You could call him a celebrity doctor at this point. He is the man behind the Angiogenesis Foundation. That's a foundation that's focused on limiting the progression of diseases like cancer. And he's also the author of 2 New York Times bestselling books, including Eat to Beat Disease and Eat to Beat Your Diet. Now, these are the first health books I now point people to because they're engagingly written, they're factually accurate, they include a ton of really great sensical information that most doctors will never put in your hands. They're incredible tools. These are also books that I turn to in another way because I truly believe in his platform. I went through and I said, hey, great, you have this 4-week course you lead. I'd like to take it, call it an audit. I'll audit your class. And over the course of 4 weeks, I will offer to my community for another podcast I host called Nutrition Without Compromise. I'll tell them what I thought of it, what I learned from it, what I think is impactful, and give them a snapshot of what it was like to be in the class so they can consider taking it too. So I guess you can say I've fangirled Dr. Li a little bit. And now I've even co-hosted a nationally syndicated show in which we interviewed him about his work as it relates to metabolic disorders and weight loss. So that will be coming out very soon on the Forever Young podcast and radio show. In fact, I believe the episode will air this Saturday, so just a few days from the release of this show. And once it's out in the world, I'll go back and put the link in our show notes so you have access to that too. So what is my reason for spending so much time talking about this right now? It's twofold. First is this is another topic I cover on the show. It's not directly connected to social impact or sustainability, but there are elements of both in the field of health and nutrition. You have regenerative agriculture and organic on one side with like glyphosate-free and GMOs, which heck, there is a social impact to that. And on the other side, you have access to health. If you don't have the health that you need, you can't be out there in the world making a big impact. You're focused instead on what's wrong in your life because you're unhealthy. So I feel like I can bring a lot to these subjects and do so through this podcast too. And maybe some of you don't like that. So I'd love to hear from you on that front as well. I also want to point out that on this topic of Eat to Beat Disease, I did do that 4-episode solocast on nutrition without compromise, kind of as a test. Does this work? Do the listeners there want to hear it? And unfortunately, I didn't get direct feedback. I didn't get somebody coming out and saying, gosh, I loved it when you did that deep dive. And that's what I'm looking for now. Do you want to see that on this show, on Care More, Be Better? Or do you really prefer the interview format shows? Beyond that, I have to mention something else when it comes to Dr. Lee. He is a service-first doctor, which is part of why I love him so much. He provides so much of his knowledge to his audiences without ever asking for a dime. He's got, I think, 90,000 followers on YouTube right now. He has a thriving Instagram channel, a quite large email list. He does free master classes all the time on at least a monthly basis. And he also makes his books and audiobooks available through libraries coast to coast. In fact, the first time I read Eat to Beat Disease, it was as an audiobook while I was watching my dogs and cleaning my, I think I need to put this on the other way, cleaning my house and walking my dogs and watching my children. I have enjoyed each of these topics, going deep on social impact, going deep on sustainability, and going deep on nutrition. So this is that question. Should I continue covering health topics on Care More, Be Better? If so, would you like to see deep dives similar to what I did for Regeneration, where I provide periodic solocasts? Or do you want me to stay focused on interviews? Is this putting too much responsibility in your hands? Do I really need you to tell me where to head? Probably not. But the reality is that I want to make this a greater value for each of you. This show is and has been about caring more so we can create a better world. But in my mind, that better world can't exist if we don't live better too. So tell me, what do you want to learn more about? What should I cover more than I have? Should I produce more deep dive solocasts and allow for a more journalistic approach and deep content? Would you like to see news style solocasts that cover perhaps environmental news from around the globe, or perhaps news from each of these main categories: social impact, sustainability, health, and wellness? Get creative with me. Tell me what you'd want to see. And if there's someone that you want me to interview that I haven't yet, please reach out and let me know. Tell me what you wish there was more of in this world of podcasting. And if I can, if it feels right, I will deliver it. I've already interviewed so many people that came as introductions from listeners or from other guests. I interviewed the co-founder of Bioneers, Nina Simons, who introduced me to Zipporah Berman of Stand Earth and the Fossil Fuels Treaty. When Zipporah and I talked about the Fossil Fuel Treaty, about the fact that we could each have an effect, and about the real challenge of facing fossil fuel companies, we so inspired this amazing guitarist, Donna Grantis, that she reached out to me and asked if she could play clips of that episode in a music festival with her music backing it. Now that music has since been released as an incredible single called A Drop in the Bucket. I'll be sure to include links to that as well. Now, these connections came through the community created by this podcast. I really only podcast to inspire myself and to inspire you, to create change, to see movement in a positive direction, to give back and see growth around me. It's possible that I love this show more than any other thing that I do professionally. Another example really stands out, and that is Beth Craig. Now, I've featured her more than once on this show now, and I can now proudly say that I consider her to be a dear friend. She joined me for a late night podcast episode in which we both talked about, watched, and listened to Donna Grantis' performance of A Drop in the Bucket. What a moment that was. Now, we've since gone on to talk deeply about the importance of accountability, of lessening the impact of our carbon footprints by giving back, and her important work with Own It Economics. Beth later introduced me to the amazing organizers of the Soil and Health Forum, held in Petaluma this September. Beth and I shared a stage together, talking about leveraging your will for good, about what it takes to give back, and really how to own your impact. Now, this summer, she and I, guess what? We're going to see the Rolling Stones together. How cool is that? Now, at that Soil and Health Forum, I also got to meet Kelly Ryerson, the glyphosate girl, and Jeffrey Smith, who knows more about the perils of GMOs than anyone else I know. I got to see and later meet Starhawk at that event and host a podcast featuring her. All three of them have now been featured on this show. None of that would have been possible if not for a listener, Beth Craig, who reached out to me via a web form first, and with whom I shared conversations, moments in person. We got to know each other. We've become friends. So really, a question about what this podcast is and what it should become is a question that's in all of our laps. Is it exactly what it needs to be, or do you want to see something different? Do I? So help a podcaster out. Visit my website, or send me a note, or even just write me a review and tell me what you'd love to see. Wherever you happen to be getting this feed today, I hope that you'll do a few things. Leave me a comment, give us a thumbs up, a 5-star rating. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. And if you can, set that bell to always so you're sure to be notified when a new episode drops. Now the holidays are here, and I'm going to be taking a brief break from podcasting while I collect feedback from the community, while I hear from you, and prepare to come back in 2024, potentially with a new format to the show. You might see episodes that are 1 part news and 1 part interview. You might see more solocasts. You could even see guest contributors. I'm open to all things. We can evolve. We can improve. We can dream of a better world, and then we can create it. This is the marvel that is humanity. I really want to just connect with that power to say that together we can do and be more, and to involve you in that process. I don't want to say it this way, but I feel like I need to. We are one another's hope for the future. We can do this together. Together we can be amazing. We can care more. We can be better. We can envision the future we want. And I can deliver more of what you want in this podcast, if you'll just give me that feedback. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Care More, Be Better, a podcast for social good. To make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts, and share with your friends to help us reach more people and spread more social good.